And our next speaker, Andres Gallegos-Riofrío, will continue to expand on this and the importance of relationality that Christy spoke about earlier, this time in the context of infusing other cultural perspectives and ancestral wisdom into regenerative social movements. He is also from the University of Vermont, but has spent over a decade in community-based research across Ecuador, Peru, Bolivia, and other places. Welcome, Carlos Andres.
Thank you very much, Susan, for that very generous introduction. And it's a great pleasure to be a part of this amazing encounter. I would like to start with reflection. I often see these large platforms like the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change or the Intergovernmental Panel for Biodiversity and Ecological Services, the importance of indigenous knowledge, of rural people's knowledge, of Islander knowledge. But I often see it as a very instrumental thing. What these societies around the globe, what has been termed the etnosphere, but Wade Davis are actually doing. Hardly this is thought in terms of the symbolic matrix that drives these communities. And knowledge doesn't happen in a vacuum. It is tied to institutions. It is tied to language. It is tied to rituals. And that has been fundamentally my experience working in rural Ecuador, Peru, and Bolivia. I started very, very early into this work when I was still an undergrad student in psychology. I wanted to understand a little bit more, something that fortunately Chris already spoke about, the mental health problem, and I focus on depression. As you know, is one of the leading global burdens, one of the leading diseases in the global burden, and also it's one of the leading causes of disability adjusted years. So it was very important, very interested at that time. The crisis is worse these days, and I wanted to understand what is depression in terms of the indigenous world. So I did the most fundamental thing, which is asking. And I spent at least a good year in the field, in rural communities, talking with elders, talking with yachaks, which is the equivalent to a shaman or a medicine person. And at a given point, I thought, like, I'm not really sure that this very prevalent problem that we are seeing in the city, it's also expressed in the same way here in the rural world. And then in a rainy day, there was this young person that was a politician, hardly participating in activities. I asked him, can I run an interview with you and ask you a couple of questions? And he was very open to that. So I started to ask things. And then I realized that this fellow was depressed, but depressed in a different way. This was the guy that was not participating in the community activities. This was the guy that was detached from the community. Then I understood depression as a community level thing. And in indigenous community, this is very powerful. People would say, either you stand up or the community will raise you up. So there's not such thing as I'm going to lay in my bed and that's it. So I'm seeing community as a protective factor, and that makes me reflect on this relational health piece, which it's a process. So it's relational healing and not just health. It is a constant thing happening. So ethnic language is something so fundamental. The way we basically perceive the world. And for indigenous people, you can see that very clearly in the language. I'm going to very quickly share a few slides, perhaps only one. So yaqui, Yaqui is being sad or blue. And this is from my old research back in 2005. But Yaqui is detriment and damage. Then it becomes Yaquichi, which is exploitation. So this is a systematic form of depression. Yaquichi Walparicuna are the ways of exploitation, like work in the mining, like that picture you are seeing in the bottom of my screen. And Yaquipachana, the colony, that terrible collective experience of suffering and dispossession. But Quichua is also a very relational language. So it is a language of reciprocity. Now, a friend of mine and an indigenous scholar would say, like, when you use the word to love in Quechua, you cannot simply use the word. You have to use the word and act in consistency to the word. So you have to be consistent. The word, the thinking in the action comes together. And another way of seeing these relationalities, for example, this word, I love it. It was shared by a linguistic in Peru, makichani tai. So imagine a small children hurts her or his hand, and the parent would say, oh, your feeling is my feeling. I'm hurt too. So you can see how it's so deeply expressed. This full work has also led me to understand deeply what happens in indigenous communities, the enormous potential to contribute to the planetary crisis. We work with very small communities that are literally blue zones with very low prevalence of chronic disease, super highly agro-diverse, also with very healthy soils. And then I'm thinking in these powerful frameworks that are real tools for the real world, like the rights of nature. If you have heard of this framework, from where this idea comes from. This was infused by cosmovisions, from the Andean cosmovision, from the way of thinking and living of Andean communities. And I'll conclude there. Thank you.